Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast creating deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. My name is Nick Brock, and joining me is Shawn Skinner.
Good morning, everybody, on a Saturday morning. I'm doing all right. I'm 16 ounces into my Red Bull right now, so I am wired.
Hold on. I thought you had a Monster, right? You showed me
not
on
a
the
Red Bull
screen
this
it was
morning.
a
I
Monster.
switched it up.
Okay, so you've already had a Monster and then now a Red Bull? While you drink?
No. I'm saying I'm not insane. I was just saying that I switched it up from a Red Bull because 9 times out of 10 it's a Red Bull. So I switched it over to a Monster just to keep it things interesting.
Yeah. How is that?
Kind of like when you go from decaf to caffeinated.
Mm-hmm. How is that changed? Because I mean, I like Red Bulls, but when I switch over to a Monster just has a ton of sugar and just a little bit too much for me. That's why I am drinking hot coffee this morning. Is
it just hot black coffee?
It's hot black coffee. It's a special blend that I really enjoy. It's a mixture of Brazil, Ethiopia, and Guatemala, all in equal parts. And it's really nutty, sweety, chocolatey goodness. I'm on my second cup.
Is that your own mix you put together?
It is a blend. It's a proprietary blend by a local coffee roaster here in town, and it is Roaster Coffee Company, not a sponsor of this podcast, but they can be if they'd like. I really enjoy their product, so much so that I'm drinking it right now on this podcast. Go out and buy Milky Way coffee.
Speaking of coffee, have you gotten a chance to drink the maple bacon coffee I got you for Christmas almost 6 months ago?
That is a great question, Shawn. Yesterday, as I brought home a pound of Guatemala coffee, I noticed in the pantry that maple bacon coffee was still in its container that I put in shortly after Christmas. And I looked at it and I just really felt a lot of guilt and remorse because I was like, oh, man, I know Shawn's going to ask me at some point, and I still haven't. So I don't know what it's going to take.
So that's a long answer just to say no.
That's right.
I haven't tried it yet.
That's right. That's me sugarcoating the bad news.
That's like me asking the wife to do something. Hey, would you mind walking the dog? Well, I'm not feeling very good. I'm a little tired. I think I got a long day. Just say no.
No.
There you go.
But I think the way that I'm going to get into that coffee is with a coffee cocktail. I think I mentioned this before. So I got a little coffee barista espresso machine set up at home, and I have a coffee cocktail book. So then that maple bacon coffee can be put in a pour over coffee, and then at the bottom of that coffee cocktail, there's like maple syrup. So it's whatever coffee that I want to drink, mixed with maple syrup. And then what makes it the cocktail is there's some bourbon as well. So I've got some bourbon, some maple flavored bourbon from Ironfish. Also not a sponsor of this program, but if they'd like to do so, we have many spots available.
This sounds like it's going to be too mapley.
Well, especially with that maple bacon coffee.
That's what I mean.
It's really going to push it over the edge.
Substitute one out. What you have to do is you have to make a control and then a tester one. So you have to make a regular recipe the way it's supposed to be done. And then next to that, do the maple bacon one. And then compare and contrast and try the two. That's what you're going to have to do.
I know.
That could be a whole episode into itself.
It really should be. I mean, it's taking up maybe almost 3 to 5 minutes of this program. So the next time you are over at the house, we're just going to have to do that. And then we'll pair that with some cigars. We'll make it an evening.
Sounds good. I'll see you at noon.
or an afternoon. Hey, Shawn, I got a little news recap for you about Ottawa County politics. Did you know, and I know that you do in a little bit, that during April 23rd's Ottawa County Board of Commissioners meeting, nearly 2.5 hours, that's right, nearly 2.5 hours were spent on public comment, with much of it in rebuke of the Reverend Louis Cypher, an ordained minister of the Satanic Temple of West Michigan and a lifelong resident of Ottawa County, for giving the opening invocation, also known as prayer. An excerpt from Reverend Cypher's prayer said, quote, and I'm going to try to get in this voice because he kind of got into it. So
great. Here we go. This is where we get canceled.
I'm going to put in my invocation voice. Let us stand now, unbowed and unfettered by arcane doctrines, born of fearful minds in darkened times. Let us demand that individuals be judged for their concrete actions, not their fealty to arbitrary social norms and illusory categorizations. Shawn, the definition of illusory is not real or illusions. I continue. Let us reason our solutions with agnosticism. Definition of that is a person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in God. In all things, holding fast only to that which is demonstrably true. End quote. And then he finalized that by saying, "Hail Satan." But
so
not
that your dialect there. Were you going for like a Revolutionary War Boston or?
yeah. So I was trying to go very Bostonian. Is that how it came off? I mean, I'm really not doing him any justice, the Reverend here, by saying it in that way.
Someone's going to be so upset by that now. It's going to be hilarious later, just to find out who might be upset.
It'll probably be me when I listen back to this. But here we go.
It makes for a good podcast.
I know, it makes for good stuff. But shortly thereafter, after the public comment itself was treated as a bully pulpit for proselytizing Christianity through many sermons and readings from the Bible. Most notably of these public comments was Commissioner Rebecca Curran, who was the first person to give public comment, and she left her commissioner chair on the dais and proceeded to what I believe is a protest of the invocation with a prayer of her own. And I'm paraphrasing this, is she wanted to manifest, or was encouraging manifesting the presence of God to fill the room and invoking it all in the name of Jesus. Finally, in this charade circus, which it was, Commissioner Bonema also tried to get in on the action, but was refuted most hilariously by board chair Joe Moss, and later left the meeting altogether before public comment was finished. The Reverend Cypher remained stoic and cool as a cucumber through everything, and that could not be said of many Christians in the overflow room where the invocation was being streamed. So that's just my short recap here for this podcast episode. Have any funny comments? Any insightful comments, Shawn, before we move on to our great guest this morning?
My main thing is just the fact that, if anybody's listened to our previous interviews with Mark, that he had mentioned numerous times that they'd spend a lot of time wasting time. And spending 2.5 hours on an invocation, therefore a back and forth, just montage of invocations, doesn't seem like that does very good for the common good for everybody else to waste that time. Apparently, they got nothing else to do.
Well, I mentioned that it's a circus, and it was like a circus of their own making. They've just, we've talked with the Mark Northrup, candidate running in District 5, and we've talked with Bender Bones of the Satanic Temple. And in a following episode, we will be talking to the Reverend Louis Cypher. And just to have 2.5 hours of public comment, It is just a waste of time. And, Commissioner Bonema, he lamented that fact. And that's why he walked out of the meeting saying, hey, when we get to county business, I will be here, quote, with bells and whistles, or maybe it was just bells, but he'll be ready. However, I think he did a disservice by walking out. He is supposed to be there for the meeting. But nevertheless.
It just all seems ridiculous to me. If they wanted to protest him doing the invocation, what they should have done was just been quiet. Because now he gets more publicity over everything that they were trying to fight to begin with. If they sat there, shut up, let him do his 5-minute invocation, and then let him be, they would have moved on to everything else and gotten everything done probably within an hour. It takes me back to like old school people protesting Marilyn Manson back in the early 2000s. Or there's no such thing as bad publicity for anything, So they just bring more eyes to what they're fighting or whatever their problem is with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Can you say that 3 times fast? Bad publicity.
That. No,
bad I can't even say it. Bad.
What? Bad publicity. Bad publicity. Bad publicity.
Yeah, that's something though that I think that gets at the heart of this whole conversation. Not with Becky this morning, but with the Satanic Temple. But enough of oh boy, let me start that again. Enough of us this
Have
morning.
Another coffee.
I know. I'm still working on it. We have Becky Patrick. Let me scroll to my notes where I get it. We have the privilege of being in conversation with Becky Patrick, a Democratic candidate for Ottawa County Commissioner in Allendale Township. That's District 8. And she is running against Ottawa Impact Commissioner and co-founder Sylvia Rhodea. Rebecca, also known as Becky, was most recently identified as, quote, arguably one of the most civically engaged citizens in Ottawa County in 2023 by the Holland Sentinel for having attended about 65 plus government meetings now and often making public comments to boards and committees. And I recently saw you, Becky, in a news clip by Fox 17 tearing up a piece of paper. So we'll talk about that. Becky, welcome to the conversation. What was that piece of paper that you were tearing up?
I think it was my public comments at a meeting back in the summer, a committee meeting. And the reason I tore up the comments was because the board chair, who was also at that committee meeting, had changed the agenda, the meeting agenda at the very last minute and had not told anybody. And this is not an uncommon occurrence. And when the agenda changed, it changed my public comments. And so I just stood up there and I said, I had all these comments to make, but none of them apply now because you changed the agenda and you didn't tell anybody. And so I'm not going to be speaking about what's on the agenda. So anyway, that was the source of my frustration, was the lack of transparency in board agendas and meeting agendas when they change them at the last minute without any public notice whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very dramatic. A lot of these meetings, have been very dramatic. And, sometimes, I think using things like you did, Becky, are required to make a point. I think drama and, things like the Satanic Temple of West Michigan are sometimes necessary to get a point across when things are, a little stale. However, let me come back to this, Becky. Do you have any, Shawn and I, we were talking about the Satanic Temple of West Michigan and giving the invocation. I am going to assume that you were there. Is that correct?
I was there. I was in the overflow room where all the shouting took place.
Perfect. Can you, do you have any thoughts on this overall? First, maybe starting about why, your thoughts on having them there and then reaction to the invocation?
Yeah. Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to back up a little bit and talk about the root cause of all of the chaos and consternation that took place at that meeting. And so, in my view, the root cause is we have to look at the board rules that allow anybody and everybody to make an invocation at the meeting. And the reason for the board rules being changed this past January to allow that is because the board got sued by Reverend Kramer back last fall because of the appearance of preferring one faith over another. He had repeatedly asked to be allowed to give the invocation at a meeting in writing and was repeatedly ignored. And so he filed a lawsuit alleging religious discrimination. And in response to that lawsuit, the board passed a rule in January that allowed anyone and everyone to give the invocation. You don't need to be a minister or adherent to any faith. I mean, you could stand up there and read the dictionary, it doesn't matter. It's now open to anybody for any purpose. And so the root of all of that goes back to the fact that the board has been sued. That I believe that was the fourth lawsuit pending against them for accusation of religious discrimination. And so if you want to get to my personal feelings on how that should be handled, it's like what the two of you just talked about how there were 2 hours of public comment that had little to do with the board business. It had everything to do with people's personal expressions of faith, which I think are fine. I'm a person of faith myself, but that is not the purpose of a Board of Commissioners meeting. And it was a giant waste of time, and it caused a huge amount of division in the community. The purpose of the invocation, according to the board rule itself, is for the benefit of the board. That is the underlying purpose, supposedly, of an invocation. There was no benefit to the board by any of that chaos the other night. All it did was distract the board from their duly appointed duties. And in addition to that, there was no benefit to the community. As far as I could tell, we had people shouting at each other. We had extra police officers on hand in order to make sure that there was no disturbance. We had quite a bit of ill will going on as far as I could see, and I was there. And I think given all of that, the board really needs to consider the purpose, whether this invocation is meeting its purpose not only for the board, but also for the community.
Why are
Shawn,
people
you're scratching
so
your
crazy?
head?
It just, it's just, I'm wrapping it all around my head. Just how much wasted time and what was accomplished or what was the purpose, and all of it all together. To have people so divided over what, people are allowed to have their own faith, and I think that's where they should stay as their own faith, and not in in politics. They're trying to discuss what they should be doing for the community. I think as leaders in the community, one of the things that we need to be focusing on is ways that we can bring people together around issues that are common to all of us. And I'm hearing that. I've been doing some door knocking already. And I know I don't have a primary opponent, and, conventional wisdom is I don't need to be doing this yet, but I do want to do it now because I want to get the pulse of the community, and I want to get my name out there because I want to be elected. And I'm hearing from people that they are really wanting their leaders to find ways to bring them together. They don't want division. They don't want chaos. They don't want turmoil. They want elected leaders to find the issues that are common to all of us and then to find ways to work on them together. And I've heard that loud and clear. I've knocked on 200 doors. My personal goal was to start on the beginning 1st of May, and I have done that. And I've knocked 200 doors so far. And that message has gotten through loud and clear. So I think we need to do that.
Yeah, Becky, we are going to get into that more in earnest at the bottom of the program here. But I'm wondering, going back to the introduction that I gave about you, and really that the Holland Sentinel and perhaps Sarah Leach recognized the chief editor for the Sentinel. You having shown up have you shown up at every meeting?
Not quite every meeting, but the preponderance of meetings. I've been to almost every board meeting and almost probably 3/4 of the committee meetings since January of 23. So yeah, it's, and there are things if you just read the minutes or whatever, you're going to miss a lot of what happens because there's a lot of it that's not captured in the minutes. And so I think it's important for average everyday residents to be at these meetings or at least watch them online to see what's happening.
Did they capture the full 2.5 hours?
In the online? Yeah. Yep.
So I asked the question because there are just a lot of people yet who don't know about what's happening in Ottawa County or what Ottawa Impact is doing. So what would you tell people about why you're attending so many meetings? Why have you attended so many meetings of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners?
Yeah. So my career was spent in state government, and when I retired, I was the regional director for what was the combined departments of natural resources and environmental quality. I had the opportunity and the privilege of seeing for many years at close range how government is supposed to work. I'm very familiar with the laws around open meetings, around Freedom of Information Act, around just the authority and the limits of government. And when I saw what was happening starting in January of 23, right out of the gate about how the governing norms were being violated, and in my opinion, laws were being at least skirted, if not ignored, that concerned me deeply. I was shocked. I had no knowledge or interest in county government before that time because things seemed to be running fine like they should be. And when I saw what was happening, I thought this needs everyday average residents to become involved or it's not going to be a good thing. And so that's why I got heavily involved.
Yeah. So I have this, and I'm laughing a little bit because, Shawn, I want to preempt your question. So, because I'm going to ask the inverse of it. So that little thing where, if you don't have that little saying, if you don't have something nice to say about something, don't say anything at all. So, Shawn, does that cue you in enough to your question?
Oh, a little bit. I thought you were going to ask your question prior to it, and I could.
Yeah, so did I, but I thought it'd be more fun this way. Okay.
I was just wondering if there's anything that you found that at least one instance that Ottawa Impact has done something in a positive light. Is there something that they've done right in your eyes?
I think one thing that is positive is they changed the meeting. It used to be that all the board meetings or the board meetings themselves, not the committee meetings, but all the board meetings were held during the day. And now there's one meeting held a month during the day, and then the other meeting is held in the evening. And I think that's a good thing because I think it makes it more accessible for people to attend who have, 8 to 5 jobs. So I think that's a good thing. I think that they have definitely engaged the broader Ottawa County community in paying attention to government and participating. And I think we can see that.
Is that in a good light though, or
well,
they're just involved because they're not?
That's an open question. I mean, I think that it's definitely a byproduct of their governance, and whether they intended it or not, it's what happened, and I'm a fan of it. So
nice.
Yeah. So, and then the inverse of this is that, and I've been asking a number of the guests we've had on the program this question as well. It's like, what one decision have you found to be most upsetting? And I ask for one because for those of us who are following along, we know that there's just a litany of things followed by lawsuits. But the question for you is like, what thing compelled you to push you over the edge and say, all right, I need to be at the meetings. And furthermore, I need to run for office.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to answer your question as you asked it, but I have to deviate from it just a bit. So the one thing that compelled me to get out of the house and into the Fillmore Street boardroom was there what seemed to be a total disregard for the Open Meetings Act. That's what compelled me out the door, because I thought if we do not have a body of elected officials who respect the fact that they have to make their decisions in public, in open, and giving people notice about what is about to take place or what they're considering doing, we have got government off the rails. That was the thing that compelled me out the door. Now, all of those other things that happened at that meeting as a result of their pre-meeting where they made those decisions are all extremely significant to me. I'm talking about the change of the motto, away from where you belong. I'm talking about the closure of the DEI office. I'm talking about the attempt to sideline Health Officer Hambly. I'm talking about hiring political cronies as legal counsel. I'm talking about firing the administrator, without, all of that happened at that meeting. And all of those things are extremely significant to me. But the precipitating event was this was all decided out of view of the public beforehand. And the Ottawa Impact folks and their attorneys have made the case that, okay, we didn't actually violate state law because we weren't sworn in when we made those decisions. But to me, that is a disingenuous argument and violates the spirit of the Open Meetings Act, and we should not allow that as residents of Ottawa County. To your second point, though, about what made me decide to run for office was most people, when they decide to run for office, they don't get out of bed one morning and go, gee whiz, I'd love to run for office. There's nothing I'd like to do more. It's a process. And that was that way for me, where I was at these meetings, watching what was happening, becoming informed, taking stock of my skills and abilities and my experience. And I thought, why am I sitting here thinking that somebody else should do this? Why am I waiting for somebody else to do it? We're not in that situation now. We all need to be willing to do our part. And so it was a process for me. I had to come to that conclusion over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Shawn, I want to briefly kick this to you. And I know that we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so I'm going to throw you a curveball here, maybe. But, a part of this podcast is, kind of coming into this cold, right? Like part of your role is like just coming into it cold and learning about the situation through the conversations that we've had outside of the podcast, and then, bringing this into the public. So, Shawn, we've had this conversation and you've heard from a bunch of people, criticizing Ottawa Impact and giving their reasons why. I wonder over this time span, like what are your thoughts on that? What's been like most surprising to you? Or you just like trying to wrap your head around?
I'm still just wrapping my head around it, being the fact that I'm not an Ottawa resident. It's more of like kind of watching from the sidelines type thing and just kind of loosely being involved. The deeper we go on it and the more people we talk to from Ottawa County and everything, and there's just lots of like, that just seems weird. That doesn't seem right. Why would you do, why would you do all those things day one? Why would you have an invocation for 2.5 hours where nothing gets done other than what sounds like arguing? Like a third world country that you see on YouTube where everybody starts jumping tables. and fighting one another. It just falls into that what happens when things go far too far one way, or the other way. But when a pendulum swings so far, it just seems like things just start going a little haywire. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just have this kind of a wonderment or question, for people who aren't paying attention. And, gosh, for people to pay attention, you have to spend a lot of time doing that. So I just, wonder kind of this, how do people see this, generally? And I know that's kind of where you come from.
And that's the hard part with politics, though, too, is the fact that unless you're like in it 100% and spend your entire day just researching and looking and researching and looking and looking and researching, you never really feel like you ever really get the full story of whatever is being discussed. You turn on Fox News, you know exactly what we're going to get in Fox News. You turn on CNN, you know exactly what you're going to get on CNN. And they're completely one way, news outlets. But that's what started our whole thing a little bit, is just trying to have an open conversation on different things, in regards to politics and faith and stuff, But and I'm hoping we're not sounding like we're only one direction, favoring one side or the other. But yeah, unless you're engulfed in it all the time, which, between the two of us, you are a lot more than I am. But that's why I'm supposed to kind of represent the naive, middle of the road, kind of want to hear about politics, kind of want to know about politics, but I literally don't have the time to sit down, close my business, shut my family out, and go, I'm just going to sit here and research 24 hours a day, type thing. That doesn't sound like a fun life to me.
Well, it's a whole lot of fun for me, and it's a whole lot of fun for Becky. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing it. But also hard work. And so I want to segue into this little piece. But before we get that, Shawn, I want to make sure that I comment on your Fox News piece. So when I turn on Fox News, which I do every morning religiously, wink, wink, heavy sarcasm. I don't even watch TV
like my
in that
dad.
way. But my favorite television personality is from Fox News. Shawn, do you know who it is?
Is it Tucker Carlson?
It is, because he's
not Fox anymore.
That guy,
he was fired.
That's true.
Fox.
But
his interview with Putin, I thought, was pretty interesting. I know you didn't watch it. I tried to get you to watch it, but you wouldn't do it.
I will not listen to or watch Tucker Carlson because he is a flame-throwing, gaslighting liar. And I think that's the strongest take that I've had on this program thus far, and I will stand by that.
Yeah. We should still watch it together.
Yeah, it could be entertainment. Go ahead, Becky.
I was just going to say, I hope you guys are probably aware, but there's a Fox affiliate in Grand Rapids who religiously covers the commission meetings. I mean, that guy is there every single time, almost, unless they pull him away on something else. And they're doing a bang-up job covering the commission. So, and I'm very appreciative of their presence and their viewpoint, because that other perspective carries weight with folks, and they're trying to give that balanced perspective. So,
well, it'd be pretty fun to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, he's he's the guy in tennis shoes that runs after Joe Moss in the parking lot trying to get interviews. And,
let me write this down. Tennis shoes.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree, though, Becky. It's Matt Whitcoast from Fox 17 News, and I've seen him at a bunch of meetings. He's had a lot of coverage on what Ottawa Impact is doing, in the same vein as the Sarah Leach and the Holland Sentinel. So anybody who wants to learn more, just Google Matt Whitcoast, Witkos, of Fox 17. Also not a sponsor of this program. All right. So recently there was an M Live.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
I don't know how that would work out, but
don't know if people who work for other news would come to other news things.
Yeah, but they could use portions of our program in some of their reporting. Hey, we spoke to Nick and Shawn of Common Good Conversations, a hard-hitting journalist podcast. Also news breaking.
We could easily just ask them questions about what is it like covering stuff like that. We don't have to ask, his actual opinion. We could just ask, the scenario. What's it like covering something like this? And we hear you're here all the time. And let's get back to Becky. So,
yeah, totally. I'd love to have him on the program. Matt, if you're listening, you can email me. All right. So there was a recent survey that MLive did. It came out in March, and it asked a series of questions to understand voters' thoughts with regard to Ottawa Impact. Now, I'm going to throw some numbers at you, listener, and Becky. So according to the survey data, approximately 25% of people across partisan affiliations have never even heard about Ottawa Impact. So it's like 27% of strong Dems have never heard of Ottawa Impact. 28% of independents have never heard of them. 27% of strong Republicans have never heard of them. And so additionally, in that survey, half of voters have never even heard of Joe Moss. Even those regions that include his district, which is District 5, Hudsonville, where Mayor Mark Northrup is running against him, roughly half, 46% of those voters have never heard of him. So many Republican voters, between like 40 and 50%, could not offer an opinion when asked various questions in this survey. So, Becky, I wonder, as you kind of go knocking these doors, these 200 that you've hit so far and that you will continue to, are you experiencing that kind of disconnect when you're talking with people, specifically Republican voters?
I'm not. I was absolutely shocked. So I spent the first 2 days canvassing a group of, and I don't know if this is representative or not. That's why I'm telling you where I was canvassing. Folks that live in condominiums around Allendale Township. And so they tend to be probably, older voters, but also quite conservative. And they were quite informed about what was happening. I was very surprised because I was reading those numbers too. And I thought, I've got a double whammy here. First I have to inform people about what's happening, and then I have to persuade them to vote for me. And that was not the case. They all seemed to know, almost to a person. All of them were aware of what was going on. And I will just tell you, extremely positive receptions from almost all of them that I talked to. And the other thing that was notable about that canvass, those 2 days of canvassing, was I had probably at least 2/3 of the doors open to me. So when you canvass, it's not unusual to have people not at home or not open the door or whatnot. And so if
I'm one of those.
Yeah, yep, exactly. I don't blame you. I understand. And I had at least 2/3 of those doors open to me when I was canvassing that day. Now, I don't know if it just happened to be dumb luck or people were, I don't know what, but anyway, and they were very, very aware, and they were quite positive to my campaign, and I was pleasantly surprised. So now I canvassed in a different area yesterday, which were single family homes. And I got, of course, fewer doors opening. And then of those that opened, I would say maybe a quarter of those folks indicated that they had some knowledge of what was happening. So that's more tracking with those numbers.
So that's really encouraging news, and I'm sure you'll experience more of that hopefully along the way. But Becky, I have you know this obviously because you've researched into what you're doing in the district that you live in. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but during the last election cycle, Sylvia Rhodea and Greg DeYoung, the incumbent commissioner from before, were running against each other, and Ms. Rhodea crushed Greg DeYoung, in my estimation, just in terms of total votes. And there was no Democratic candidate in the primary. So, I say that to say, I think you have, and you probably know this, that you have an uphill battle as a Democrat, right? This is a strong, the county is just a stronghold for conservative Republican voting patterns. How do you see yourself being competitive in this district?
Yeah, I think the thing that we all need to keep in the forefront of our minds is that nobody really knows what's going to happen here. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Number one is obviously the extreme level of publicity and concern about what's happened in county government over the past year and a half. That's just out there, and people are concerned. And the other thing is, a couple other things are that Allendale Township, as you probably realize, is one of the fastest growing communities in the state, not only in Ottawa County, but in the state in terms of people moving in here. And so what Ottawa County or what Allendale Township looked like maybe 5 years ago or so is not necessarily what it looks like today. I think the increase in the number of registered voters since the 2022 election, I want to say, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000, which is about, I might get this number wrong, but about 1/7 of the total number of voters from the previous election. So that's a big number. And so there's that going on. The other thing that's going on, or that I think is notable, is that in the 2022 election, when Sylvia Rhodea won that seat, in the general election for her race, there was a 30% undervote, which means that out of all the people that voted in that election, 30% of them chose not to vote in her race for some reason. Now, what that reason is, we could speculate. I don't know what it is. But that's a significant number of people who chose not to vote for her, even then, in 2022. So if you couple all those things together, the controversy, the number of people moving into the area, the fact that she had a 30% undervote in that race, and I've asked every person I can buttonhole in Allendale, what do you think? What are people thinking? What's going on here? And they all kind of say, you know what, we're not sure. And so I think it's an open question. And I intend to do everything in my power to talk to every voter in Allendale and see what they think and to try to persuade them to vote for me.
So here's your persuasion pitch, your elevator pitch, right? So I'll kick it off like this. So what makes you arguably one of the most civically engaged citizens in Ottawa County in 2023, the clear choice for the people in District 5 of Allendale Township to become their next county commissioner?
Okay, so my elevator pitch. This is kind of the one I gave at the League of Women Voters. My elevator pitch is, number one, I'm a fiscally responsible candidate. I'm not going to take up your time and your listeners' time with all of the sad story of our current lack of fiscal responsibility, but I'm going to assume that you certainly know it and many of your listeners know it. We have a huge liability with all of the lawsuits, all of the actions taken by the board majority, and we need to stop that. We need to get people in charge who are going to stop putting the county at fiscal liability. So that's my first message to the voters is I'm a fiscally responsible candidate. My second message to the voters is I'm experienced. I think that part of what has happened over the past year and a half is that the board majority lacks government experience. They lack an understanding of the laws and authorities and limits on government, and that these things really matter, and that there are people watching that who are going to insist that they abide by them. And I have that knowledge and ability and experience. I'm also experienced in bringing people together, working in coalitions, finding common ground. So people are tired of the chaos. They want people who are going to lead them in a responsible, productive, good faith manner. And so those are my two elevator pitches to the people in Allendale Township who I think will have concerns about what's been happening.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And thanks for not boring us with the fiscal stuff.
Yeah,
Shawn gets bored easily.
Huh? What?
You have it. Do you have any questions, Shawn, on there about why or in that elevator pitch?
Oh, no. I was just wondering what she might be, if she actually did get elected, what she might do day one.
Oh, yeah. So there's three things I really want to do. Day one is we have to restore trust. And we do that by getting just boring stuff in place, like policies, transparency, agendas on time and not changed at the last minute.
Boring.
Yes, exactly. All the boring stuff has got to be put in place so people can trust the board. The second thing would be that I want to look at restoring the relationship with the Department of Public Health. And I'm also interested in making sure that we support our mental health programs, because we have 1 out of 5 adults in Ottawa County who are living with a mental health diagnosis. That those 2 programs alone touch every resident in Ottawa County, and we need to make sure we've got them in place and supported. And then the last thing is, in Allendale, we have a situation where we have a groundwater problem. And that also may sound boring, except for the fact that we have many, many people on wells in Allendale Township without access to municipal water. And if the groundwater is not available, it's not drinkable, they don't have access to water. And that's a pretty important problem and something that needs to be attended to. And the good folks at Ottawa County are working on it, and I want to support them in that.
Yeah, well, I love government that can be boring. I know that a candidate in the Grand Haven district, I think it's 10, Josh Bruger, that's like kind of one of his pitches, returning to boring government. So what I'm hearing, Becky, is that on day one, you would not fire the county administrator and place him with a formal political candidate without conducting a public interview. And I'm going to go on a little sarcasm pitch here. You're not going to eliminate.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it does. This is fun and exciting, and this is implosion of government politics. You would not eliminate one of the county's new departments without review. You would not attempt to replace the director of a major department with somebody who has no applicable job experience. You would not replace the county's longtime corporation counsel with a legal group that compels a conflict of interest. And finally, you would not change the county's motto to something that contradicts the board's actions on a regular basis. So that is pretty good to hear. And those are all things that Ottawa Impact did, not just in their first term of 2 years, but on day one. Going back to Becky's comments before, by throwing the whole community into disarray by putting, or rather not putting, these things on a public agenda so they could just wheel and deal. All right, Becky, as our listener has come to know by this time, this is a news breaking program. That's right, Shawn. So we're going to break some news. We should have like a sound bite where like something breaks. Maybe we can work on that. Shawn's going to work on that. We need better than that. But I'd like to announce that Becky has committed to becoming a common good candidate in Ottawa County. So this means that Becky has committed to the values of trustworthy leadership, responsible governance, genuine belonging, ethical conduct, service before self, and love in politics. And for those interested in learning about that, there are a few descriptions about being a common good candidate at our website, votecommongood.westmichigan.org. So Becky, thanks so much for committing to the common good. Would you like to share, please share like what why you wanted to commit to this and what this means to you?
Yeah, I think all of those attributes and values that you just outlined, if they were in place right now with the board majority, we would not be in the situation we're in. And they are basic to good governance, and they're basic to what people expect out of their elected officials. And I think that I'm thankful that Vote Common Good West Michigan has articulated these, and that they've given people a chance to say, yes, that's what I'm about. And I appreciate that opportunity and appreciate the opportunity to become endorsed. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's and two, like make that clear for everybody involved in this. It's yes, we do showcase common good candidates. We try to amplify their voice in these spaces, but this is something that candidates of any persuasion self-select. So they commit to organize around these principles and to talk about these things in their campaign. So we really appreciate that. So, Shawn, do you have any final question or comment before we let Becky go?
No, not at this moment. One last question, Becky, are you a Pepsi or a Coke person?
Oh wow.
Neither, actually. Too much sugar. I used to be a Coke person, but yeah, I'm pretty much a water person and a tea person at the moment. Sorry.
Me too.
As he takes a long swig of his monster.
Yeah, and coffee. I'm good with coffee.
Good with coffee. All right.
But not that
black water.
Not that
water's good for you.
Stuff. No, not that icky maple bacon stuff. Yuck.
He hasn't even tried it yet.
Oh, we got a
straight
straight
under the
yuck
bus already.
We got a straight yuck, Shawn, in your face.
You got to drink it. So.
I'm a Coke person. Thanks for asking, Shawn. Coke Zero. What are you?
Coke Zero. Yeah, I used to be a Coke person. That was my thing. I always loved having Coke. Coca-Cola, I mean.
Yep.
I never liked Pepsi. Pepsi always tasted like it was way too sugary. But now I can't drink. I could drink a Monster every once in a while or Red Bull because it comes in an 8-ounce can. But I can't drink much Coke anymore. It's like it's too carbonated all the time. It feels it's like overly carbonated, plus really sugary. Probably not good for you.
Yeah, we should probably drink more water.
Yeah.
Friends, that is common good candidate. I keep saying this because I have Rebecca in my notes, and I think that's on your website too, right? That's the more formal version.
It is. I'm putting Becky on all my signs because it's shorter and easier to remember. So
there we go. Common good candidate Becky Patrick, the Democratic candidate for Ottawa County Commissioner in Allendale Township District 8, running against Ottawa Impact Commissioner and co-founder Sylvia Rhodea. If she wins her primary, real brief here. Is she facing a primary from somebody?
Yeah, from David Morin, who is also an Allendale resident, and he's also been a frequent public commenter at board meetings.
Oh, so. Wow. He's also been very supportive of their work, correct?
Correct. Yeah, up until recently. So I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah. So he filed to run, and so yeah, they've got a primary against each other.
Oh, that's fascinating. I've seen some of the public comment with him, and he made this remark. This was early in the year, but he's like, I think we need to right the ship, but you've righted it too much. We need to set this thing anew. He's like, I love all the stuff you do, but you've gone too far.
Yeah.
Yep.
Turned
for
away
another
from the
iceberg, but right in the land.
Boom. Titanic style.
You're not going to ask me about their 60% raise?
Oh gosh, I would.
Raise?
Becky.
I want a 60% raise. Nick, I want a raise.
Well, sure, you've got it from
boom.
Yeah, 0 to 60, done. Becky, that's such a great question. We're going to talk about that a little bit with some other folks. But go Google that, listener. Thank you, Becky, for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, Shawn, we got a what? What will I say?
I don't land the plane.
That's right.
Because that's what you always say.
I know,
because you're very original.
Now we got a 5-minute window to get our next record because we record these all together. So, listener, stay informed in 2024, and we'd love to hear from you. Seriously, we'd love to hear from you. What did you think of our conversation with Becky? Was this helpful for you? Who would you like to have us on the program? If you have any comments, please be sure to leave them on our Facebook page, under this podcast episode with Becky. Also, be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter at votecommongood-wm.org. When you sign up, you'll receive podcast and event updates. And finally, follow us on all our socials with Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can, I'm looking at Shawn's screen with fireworks. I don't know how he did that. Anyways, friends, thanks West Michigan for joining this Common Good conversation. Till next time, be the common good in West Michigan.
See you guys.